Thank you very much, Dracos. Great cast today. Welcome to World's Cooldown. I am Freak, joined by Ender and Papa Smithy. We had Griffin win 2 games in a row to close out the day, take the #1 spot. Papa Smithy, start with you. LCK on top.
Really a sleeping giant situation, you'd have to feel like, from Griffin. They've been off the pace for so long in 2019. I didn't know if we'd ever see this Griffin again, so it was a real pleasure to see them step up and perform as if the last 6 months or so had never really come to pass.
And like the last time these two teams faced off didn't matter whatsoever because G2 did so well in that game, but Griffin, they bounced back entirely. They looked like a completely different team in today's games and smashed G2 back to back.
Absolutely. Of course, one other thing we can talk about is just how they kind of made this one happen. Of course, Griffin, generally speaking, were one of the lowest kill teams, right? They were very controlled, and we actually saw a pretty good amount of aggression, a good amount of killing here from them.
Yeah, the low kills changed today, and I can't help but feel like Griffin were always the team playing on the offensive. Early game, mid game, there was no late game. It just ended here for Griffin because they were always the ones making the first move, and it started with smart play around the bottom lane, burning flashes, then finding kills, then looking for dives. They kept building on each consecutive play until it was insurmountable for G2.
And we always find it very hard to have the correct vocabulary about Griffin because they're not a prototypically fast team. But what we do see from them in this particular day of play, their 4-0 run today, is that they're very decisive and always able to grow incremental leads and recognize where they can take more. Often that's CS or a favorable setup, but they keep moving forward. And in this game, they capitalized, and maybe that's what they do best, capitalize on windows better than any other team.
That was the most pleasant surprise for me in today's games, was seeing Griffin not just go for the small victories like we are used to them seeing, but risking it on some tower dives, going for these aggressive plays. If you turned off nameplates, I would expect that coming out of a team like a G2 or an FPX, but no, it was Griffin, and they made it happen.
And I gotta say, strong performances from every player on this team. The Xayah Rakan got through, right? They leave up the Kiana for first pick. That's not much of a problem for Jankos. You got the Lee Sin in for Tarzan. This is a player that I know people have been waiting to see for a while on the world stage. Good to see him here as well. A lot of really smart players in this roster.
I gotta be real with you guys. I think Griffin absolutely smashed G2 in that last draft. You have multiple poke tools. You can have some strong lanes, maybe top lane, maybe mid lane for G2, but you have the hardest engage tools from long range with an Ornn, a Rakan, a Galio. You can't play poke against that much CC.
I think you're correct in that the last pick, Ornn, I was actually calling for first pick out of the second round. You and I were talking about.
I was listening to you call that.
You just remember back and you're like, wow, Zoe couldn't really contend with Ornn back in the previous meta. Cassiopeia, all these mid-range kind of effectiveness champions. The outrange there is real. You walk up to poke and suddenly you find your life void through the knockups. So that was a really inspired pick. And just in general, like the last 2 games, like you haven't seen shellackings like that in a while against G2. The Fnatic games are always kind of to and fro, but this was very much Griffin, 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 and very little punchbacks.
And I want to focus on Sword for a little bit right here, because one of the storylines we had coming in was, is it Sword or Doran? And they come top in the group, only Sword so far. One of the topics about Sword that I'd heard was, oh, his champ pool is so limited. He's basically Aatrox Jace 2 trick. And the Ornn comes out, looks solid, right? It doesn't seem right now that he's very exploitable. And he's up against some really great top laners. Licorice had a great week 1. Wonder, we know, is one of the world's best. So thoughts on Sword?
I mean, I think he's been very good for this team. We've seen pop-up performances on stuff like the Akali even earlier as well. So all around, I'm feeling pretty confident with the roster that Griffin is fielding at the moment. We still haven't seen Doran perform on the international stage, so it's impossible to say a direct comparison. But Griffin came out on top of a group that I don't think many people would have predicted them to. So I think they're very happy.
I just think it would have been an incorrect prediction based on what we saw in week 1, but the moment they started today, they were building towards something and we kind of saw the payoff by the end. Coming back to your question about Sword, the one that really impressed me was the Akali. I thought he had a really clean Akali performance. Now, it was in a matchup where Shen can only do so much, kind of has blunt tools against the Akali. And what I'll say is, in the future, if they run into a top lane carry player in a skill check 1v1 skill matchup, that doesn't really suit him. Those are usually the areas where he's exposed. But in today, when he's drafting priority or falling back to the tanks, you're right. He was effortlessly able to contend with the best punches that the other top laners had to throw at him.
Well, we'll see what their matchup ends up being in a couple of days. But for more on Griffin's win, let's hear from their bot lane Viper.
Thank you very much, guys. Griffin just took the first seed in their group, and I'm just here with Viper. Thank you very much for joining me. Sangil 축하해요. What does it mean to you to grab the first seed on your birthday?
오늘 생일 축하드립니다. 이제 그룹에서 시드 1을 받으셨는데 소감 한마디 먼저 부탁드려요.
우선 첫날 그 지수한테 져서 좀 흔들렸었는데 그러지 말고 잘 집중해서 하자고 해서 다 같이 잘 이긴 것 같아서 기분이 좋습니다.
So after we lost against Griffin the first night, it was a little bit hard. We were a bit lost, but we said, okay, guys, let's focus and let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that, I'm a bit confused too because they beat you once and you smashed them twice afterwards. How do you explain that?
저도 굉장히 놀랐습니다. 사실 첫 판 때 졌는데 오늘 정말 압도적으로 승리를 하셨어요. 어떻게 그렇게 하실 수 있었나요?
우선 저희가 생각한 대로 진행이 돼서 그 뱀픽이든 플레이든 그래서 저희가 저희 실력을 잘 보여준 것 같습니다. 그래서 이긴 것 같습니다.
So everything went as we planned, the draft, the players, and I think that's why we were able to win.
That's incredible. Do you think the red side is better for you?
레드 사이드가 좀 더 세다고 생각하시나요?
이거는 중요한 상황이라서 얘기할 수가 없을 것 같습니다.
I can't answer that.
Well, makes sense. Don't want to reveal too much. Strat, now, moving forward to the quarterfinals, is there any team you're looking forward to facing, and what did you learn from the group stage here?
이제 8강 진출하시게 됐는데.
저 개인적으로 RNG랑 좀 붙고 싶고 8강에 진출해서 우선 실감은 안 나는데 정말 기쁩니다.
I still don't realize that we're in the quarterfinals and I want to play against RNG.
And on your first showing, I hope you will get to play against them. Thank you very much again for the interview. Thank you, Hajin, for the translation. Now back to you guys.
Thank you very much. So let's take a look at how this group overall shook out. Of course, we saw Griffin 4-0, LCK second seed. The interesting point is they lost into Worlds, right? They were ordered the top seed to go into the LCK finals. They lost that one to SKT. They had enough points to not have to play the regional qualifiers. Last time we saw them was them losing, and pretty horribly so. And yet, coming around here in week 2, stepping up, a great run for them, 4 straight wins.
I mean, before today, there was the real world where they were the kind of team that limped in based on regular season, could never get it done in playoffs, and then the kind of second seed you're not proud of syndrome could have applied to Griffin. They needed a day like this to remind us of that limitless ceiling that was evident when they were a rookie squad dominating the LCK in their first split 1 year ago, and it does reset a lot of what could have been piling onto the Griffin organization on a day like today.
Right, to win in these high-pressure situations is exactly what fans of this organization have been waiting for so long to see. So it is great to see that happen. And then you get to write off, coming in as the LCK second seed, because you come out of groups first. It doesn't matter what you did in the regular season.
Sure, and of course, we just heard from Viper. He wants to play RNG in the first best of 5 of Worlds. Now, for Griffin, not a team with a great track record of best of 5s. I'm sure we'll get into that around the quarterfinal time. But of course, we do know Griffin and G2 Esports are the top 2 seeds out of this group. It does mean, though, we can see those darkened teams. Cloud9 and Hong Kong Attitude are out. They are done. Their Worlds run has finished, and they are flying home. And I want to redirect and talk about these bottom 2 teams. We look at Worlds last year. LMS was the only region to go 0-6 in the group stage. Here's HK doing it again. That's got to sting quite a lot for fans of that region. We saw J-Team already only get 3rd last time around, but I do want to spend a bit more time talking about Cloud9, because this is a team, an organization that has failed in groups once since 2013, 7 times at Worlds, quarterfinals at least 6 of those, well, 5 of those now, because once again, out in groups here.
And it's a big result, right? Because Cloud9 has been that North American standby that always got you quarters, and then last year hit the Apex, the semifinals, which is a really big thing for the North American region. I was next to Kobe tearing up at how much that meant. But this year, it never seemed to get together, even paying forward Svenskeren and his performance. They didn't really seem convinced on roster or meta. They just seemed confused about a lot of things, I think, coming in, and this never really hit their rhythm.
Which is very surprising, too, because I think, while not everyone would have pegged C9 to come out of this group, Griffin and G2 obviously very strong competition. A lot of people expected more of a challenge, I think, from this team, especially like Svenskeren stepping up. But I think this team, switching in between these 2 junglers, neither of them really found their footing here on the international stage. And a lot of people believing in that history were never fulfilled in that promise that C9 usually do make it out of groups. So, hopefully they can clean that up going into 2020.
Yeah, it's one of the interesting things about Cloud9 and their trips throughout Worlds is sometimes it's them really rising to the occasion. You think about last year, and it was a close fight with Vitality. It was actually Gen G who stumbled entirely and had a horrific run, and that's what let C9 get in a top 8. And then a good performance against a Freak, right? Like there were signs of, hey, really good, and signs of, well, it turns out it wasn't a group of death after all. We have a really rough record for them, week 2 in Europe, something like 1-6 overall for the squad. But final thoughts. Licorice was very good week 1. Blabber had some nice moments, but it felt like, to your point, I kind of agree that a lot of C9 didn't seem to really show up against the world's best.
The disappointing thing is, this is an org that always kind of basically will be at World Championships level. They weren't really able to learn much about this configuration and how it mapped to the Worlds. I thought Niski definitely versus LCS performance underperformed, but does that mean anything grand? It's so hard to read in because, like I said, you need your foothold at the World Championships, and arguably Griffin only got there today because they were looking so reactive a couple of days ago, and Cloud9 kind of stumbled at the first ask.
Yeah, I think the story of Niski is almost an interesting one, too, because he left Europe this year, right? And, he had never achieved much here in the LEC, always, third place finishes, semifinals, getting dropped out in quarters. So this was his chance to come back and try to prove something. And ultimately, at the end, he stumbled and fell once more.
And he was good domestically in the LCS.
Exactly.
He was definitely a strong mid laner, one of the strong points for the team. To me, he was the worst player on C9 at Worlds, which is too bad, but look, it's some of the world's best. Now, real quick, earlier, Laura caught up with C9 Sneaky. Let's see what he had to say.
Thanks, guys. Laure here, and joining me right now is Sneaky. I'm sorry things didn't go your way today, but what lessons will you learn from this run this year at Worlds?
I guess since just now losing, today, I haven't had too much time to reflect on our lessons, but there's just been a few things that we ran into during practice that maybe we didn't pick up on as quick because thinking about it back, we saw some Garen Yumi and we were playing against it, but we didn't we started playing it and then the enemy had counters and we were not really sure how good it was, and it ends up a lot of people were just playing it anyways, so it was hard to read that. And then in general gameplay, I feel like the game with the most life was our last one versus G2, and I was having fun and I was just messing around, but we did put up a pretty good fight in that game, and I don't know. I listened to G2's comms as well, and it seems like a lot of what they just say is just pretty troll. So I don't know. I feel like for myself as well and the whole team, when we're in a more light atmosphere, it seems that it's a lot easier to just play. I don't know what holds us back when we're being serious, but it seems like we're a lot less willing to take plays when we're too serious.
Would you say that the main issue you had was your read on the meta and maybe you had the wrong one coming here?
I don't know. For sure, it did not feel great on a lot of those games playing because we played the Sona Tom and that game felt really winnable to us, but Garen Yumi was just really hard to kill anyways, and it's not like we had anything to bust it open with a Vayne or anything like that. And then in a lot of the games, it was just really hard win conditions. The game versus Griffin that we played the second time, we had full global comp, and we didn't end up using it right, and then we just lost the game from there. So yeah, maybe there were some champs that were not as good as we thought. I know Kale's really strong, but it seems also really hard to make it work. So yeah, I think meta is always really hard to get a read on, especially during Worlds where even changes week to week.
Now, thinking about next year, you will have to change some stuff maybe. So what would it be? Maybe having more fun in game? I don't know.
Yeah, it's something I think about for sure. Just realizing what's important, realizing what our objective is. And there's some stuff that we were trying to figure out. I guess one thing was sometimes when people say stuff when we're playing seriously, no one really responds to it, and then it kind of just gets ignored. Because I was just listening to our comms just from scrims, and that happens, and I'm like, why are we ignoring this guy actually? Even though it's really important stuff. Yeah, there's gonna be some of that, and then yeah, maybe we'll try to have more fun, and not just totally messing around, but just having a more lighter atmosphere than only talking about exactly what's going on at all points.
So light atmosphere and giving feedback in a different way. Now you entered World this year, regardless of what happened. You entered World this year as the first player qualifying to World 7 years in a row. So was it special for you?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't feel too much different because, like you just said, I've been here every time since I've been a pro. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy, and it's been a while since I haven't made it out of groups. This 2015 was the only other time. So yeah, I mean, sad, but also cool to be here again and try to prove ourselves against the world's best.
2015, huh? There's something about Europe then.
I don't know. Maybe it's a solo key. It just takes us down. It breaks our mental, and we can't play anymore.
I apologize about EU solo queue then. Now, do you have any last words for the remaining NA teams in contention?
Yeah, I know it looks pretty doomed for Clutch, but I think they can still get out of groups. They just have to go 3-0, win a tiebreaker. We've been in a lot of similar situations, so is NA in general, and I think TL will do well. Good luck to them. Make sure you guys have some fun in your comms.
Looking forward to seeing you again next year, Sneaky, and thank you very much for the interview. Now back to you guys.
All right, words from Sneaky. Have some more fun in your comms, and you'll get out of groups.
Look, Sneaky said he wanted to have some more fun. I thought he meant 2020. He's up there telling me that Clutch Gaming are going to make it out of groups tomorrow?
Yep. He's ready to go. He's ready to believe in North America. He's waving that flag. Hooney's going to go back to the World Final. Calling it here.
All right.
That's not true.
I have a lot of respect for anyone willing to do a loser's interview. Like that's hard, you know. It's very self-affirming, and you could see there's those cogs turning still for Sneaky. Right, where could it have been tightened up in play, in meta, in communication? So hats off to him, and that's that 7-year run. That's very, very hard to equal. Right, that's the consistency that Cloud9 have shown, and that's why I'm very excited to see. Is it sweeping change? Is it small change? Is it incremental? What side is it on?
Sure.
This is probably the first time in a while that Jack and the gang have had a lot to think about coming out of a World Championship.
Yeah, this one where they definitely could have shown a lot better, and it felt like a bit of a failing in terms of how well they played. Now let's move on up the standings a bit. We talked about Griffin a lot early on. Of course, top seed out of this group. G2 Esports, LEC champions, MSI champions. On the day, could not beat Griffin.
Yeah, I mean, very disappointing stuff coming through from them. In all honesty, just got outplayed across the board because the first 2 games looked good from them. They were the happy games. They were the fun games. And I almost wonder if this puts them in the wrong mindset. When you have 2 sort of off-the-wall games back-to-back, and then you have to go into a match that determines whether or not you will be first seed in your group. It certainly felt like they were not necessarily at the same mind state in these games compared to 3 and 4.
And the question, of course, on many people's minds now, many G2 and EU fans' minds is you're looking forward to the draw show, you're looking forward to a best of 5 where you're kind of querying the last couple of performances. I put a lot of respect into the G2 and specifically the veterans on this roster. Like all these guys have been around and gone through the kind of being churned out of a system and get through a long season. I think they can get it up for a best of 5, but there's some tricky potential draws, and suddenly we're looking at, and obviously SKT haven't finished first yet, but if that goes as an expectation, we could have a rematch of that 5-game MSI semifinal in quarterfinals, kind of aping the KT IG series we had last year.
I mean, it's almost likely at this point, too. You consider the big 3 coming into the tournament was G2, Fun plus Phoenix, and SKT. Fun plus Phoenix already confirmed first. If SKT do it too, that's a 50-50 chance of having a power matchup right there.
I mean, you're at 2 of 3. There's only one other possible opponent, which is whoever tops Group D, which could well be Invictus. And all of the potential matches for G2 are really tough. But, I mean, this is the world we live in, right? Where the top teams around the world are in different regions, right? Europe, China, and Korea, and they're all incredible. So that's going to be exciting. Of course, we have more games to play. Starts up again tomorrow with Group C. A huge day there. So many amazing teams. RNG versus SKT starts the day. The only remaining team that could go undefeated is SK Telecom T1. Fnatic, I know they're hungry to pull themselves back up as well.
And so far, the expected winners haven't been just rolling through, right? If you think about how the days have played out, we've had 3-0 run from Splice yesterday, a 4-0 run from Griffin today. We think we know what to expect here, but Fnatic have already made it back from a more dire situation than 1 and 2. And I'm so interested to see what their read is on the meta come tomorrow, because they've been very staunchly running into the Garen Yuumi and these kind of bot lanes, the Morgana Blitzcrank most recently. We know that if you ask Reckless to play Tristana and Sivir, he can definitely fall back into old play styles, but can Fnatic as a 5 kind of recreate their style that right now is a little bit more kind of 5 people carrying rather than the Reckless show?
Right, the hot topic is the bottom lanes, but I think I need to see Bwipo and Nemesis step up, because when this team looked like it could contest, G2 in 5 games in 2 back-to-back series in the LEC playoffs, it was through roaming from Nemesis and massive early game impact from Broxah. I have not felt that same Fnatic on the stage here in the Verdi Music Hall, and that's what must change for this team if they are to make it out against the Titans of RNG and SKT.
And that's why Broxah empowered, with a couple more resources with the Garen Yuumi bot lane, wasn't able to find a lot early game. If it's about bot lane, then obviously your path is a lot more simple, right? And Broxah has been able to camp for lanes in previous metas, so there is an argument to just kind of flip the script and make it all about bot lane again.
So quick question to both of you. What are the 2 teams getting out?
I think it's going to be SKT and RNG. I don't feel like Fnatic can make the sweeping changes.
And Papa?
I think you can't predict Fnatic with the available information, and yet you can't be surprised if Fnatic do get there. So I'm hopeful on Fnatic. I had them originally as my predicted teams to get out, but I think today it's an irresponsible prediction.
So SKT RNG is the prediction right here. I tend to agree it's my pick'ems, but hey, surges can definitely happen. We've seen Fnatic come back from worse. That's all from us here from Worlds Cooldown. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with more Worlds 2019.
It's your reflection looking back to pull you down. So are you gonna do?
Zazel trying to get away, the Justice Punks won't allow him to escape, but here comes the paranoia, maybe C9 have found a fight. Hexa go to mid, jumping onto the back line, Viper's already killed off Zazel, and there's the double, Sven Scammon falls as well. Here comes Sword, slicing through C9. Unified steps forward, but straight into the quickness, just walks straight into Mickey, and G2 will happily accept these kills. But here comes the Divine Judgment, Crash surviving on the back line, it's a double for Jankos, making a triple.
I've got it this time.
Managing to survive for the moment. Tarzan sticking down. 3Z first blood in the 2v1. He gets under the tower. 3Z has carried his performance against G2. He takes them down. Look at Viper. How do you get anywhere near this? The final chapter comes out. Viper's just going to 1v4. Look at the damage coming out from him and Kaiwig from the head side. They just ripped through them. That's just done.
G2 now looking in, trying to clean up. Perks flashes in, trying to look for some fancy outplays. Zazel might just get cut down now. Licorice is next on the list, but Perks needs to get out of there. He's stealthed up, but no. Niski will grab the kill in the end. Wonder Rumble bringing it to the backside, and that's gonna do it. Kaiwig locked up, tries to buy with the chances. He should come in. A perfect flash now takes him up to the Jackson's going to follow up. Licorice now could be in trouble. Keep your eyes on the Super Unified, but right now C9 are just dominating the fight.
And now they have their eyes set on the tower.
But Griffin want to fight shit on the way in. Lehendra's gonna come to this fight to knock him. May stop more, but it's not going to be enough.
G2 is a team that will try to fight their way back into the game.
Look, they're defending the inner tier too.
They're going in. Kiana just gonna cut through the entire team.
Jankos could make something happen here. Tarzan would be waiting, and now they're actually going to counter.
There you go. The Rakan now comes in. They're going to kick him right back in the middle of the team. The Kiana can't get anything done. Tarzan focusing on that one. Griffin now having Viper legendary. They're going to pull the feathers back. Perk's going to be able to make another one. That's petrifying gaze, but it's not enough. It's a clean kick coming in from the Lee Sin. Jankos tries to disengage, but it's not a supreme display of talent. It is just a call for retreat. When the pressure is on, they show up. They show up big, and they have dominated the LEC's first seed to take first in the group.